Today, what I want to show to you is how I took a Fortune 500 team's disorganized file workflow and created a simple framework based on what their designers were already doing. It's something you can apply if you have a business, if you are a team, and everything's a mess. If somebody's out of office, you don't know where anything is, and that can create problems, right? That can slow down business. You burn through cash just by being disorganized, but what you want is for your teams to be more focused on executing and innovating. So today, we're gonna do 3 things. I'll walk you through the key framework, the core principles, and how you can implement that yourself. So let's dive in. The number one problem is that teams usually pick a tool to solve a disorganization problem. So the problem tends to arise with teams when there's no plan for how they're going to move a group of people into the tool. The tool is like a house, and then the group of people is like a family. If nobody has any directive on where things go, who's having what room, if you're going to put the bookshelf in the middle of the living room or you're gonna put it on the side, chaos ensues. If you try to throw a party, which is when a house is tested to its limit, what's the flow like, where is everything at, things are chaotic. What you need to put in between those two is a standard, and that's exactly what we did for this team. So how do you do that? You need to start by defining what the house layout looks like, or what the tool looks like. A big problem I've seen emerge is in a tool, if it says projects, that might mean something different to each person on the team. One person might think a project is just what they're doing today. They open up something, they're like, yeah, there's a project I'm working on. For someone else, it might be a series of different things that's a project. And for the tool you're working in, that might mean something entirely different. And so we first need to align around a shared definition of the same word to eliminate friction down the line. The reality is most companies struggle with their files, their tools, and their workflows, not because of the tool, but because they moved into the tool without a plan. So today, we're gonna make a plan. First, let's talk about what we saw in Figma. We saw there were 3 tiers of organization. You had a file, which is pretty self-explanatory. You open up a design file, you can design pretty stuff in it, right? And then within that file, there were pages. We aligned around what that meant. But on the next level, what was called a project really acted as a folder or a group of files. And then from there were teams, which was just a collection of groups of files. Once we aligned around what that meant, we actually could look at the team structure and say, okay, we're gonna see who's gonna move in. If there are 3 people in the house and there are 3 rooms in the house, that's very easy. There's a 1-to-1 fit ratio, as I like to call it. Now, in the case of the team I worked with, there was a mismatch in the fit of the teams. There were 4 teams fitting into a place with 3 tiers. And we looked and there was no extra tier, there were no plans in Figma for them to open a new one, so they had to adapt with some kind of custom framework to bridge the gap between what they needed and what was there. And so in a family, this might look like the boys share a room, the girls have their own room, and then obviously mom and dad have their own room. And so what we did is we created a simple naming system. So if it was the marketing team, we named it marketing dash whatever the sub area was, so maybe it's paid ads, and we had a very conventional top-down naming workflow like that, and we just captured that somewhere. We just said, okay, let's just write this down. If you're putting something together, this is the format you need to name it in. And also, if you need to look for anything, you can easily go in ABC order list view, look at everything. So that immediately solved the fit ratio problem we had. That was one bottleneck that was creating friction, that was kind of compounding the disorganization everybody was experiencing. The next thing that we did was we figured out what designers were actually doing. We said, let's look at their workflow and just capture what they're doing. And we found that they tended to have 4 different uses for their files. And so we just identified what those were and named them. And what I did is I individually met with everyone on the team. This team in particular was a team of 35, so I met with each person, saw what they did, and I saw the through line between it all. Because obviously teams, they don't have time to stop and slow down, they have to feed the business, they have to move things forward. So it's good to have a third party come in, meet with them, walk through it in a session of 60 to 90 minutes, but overall we found that there were 4 reasons or 4 ways that they use files. Okay, Figma doesn't have a designation for this, so once again, we bridged the gap with some kind of custom framework. So we realized that there were files they worked in, there were files they handed things off to developers in. These are people who are coding, these are people who are building out the designs and making them real. And if you're new to tech, basically designers are like the architects designing blueprints, and the coders, they're like the people with the hammer and the nails putting it together. We noticed they had the working file, the handoff file, and then they had files that they didn't actively use. These are files that they just referenced. These are things like big maps of the system, these are things like research, these are things that aren't used day to day, but again, they reference them, okay? So we called them reference files. And then the last one were files that we didn't want to delete, but we also didn't really want to keep in the way. So we just called those archived files. We said, if we just name these archived, we do ABC order list view, it'll lump those together, get them out of the way. We can see what the live files we're working on are. Much easier. If somebody's out of office, we can navigate everything quickly. If there's an old concept we don't know if we're gonna need, we just archive that concept, get it out of the way, expedite the workflow. We put a thumbnail, so when you're scanning them, you see red, you see black, you see white, or you see a grayed out color to kind of show archived or like inactive. We just kind of figured out what people were already doing. We put it in the place where they might already be using it, and we just captured it, okay? So there's actually a standard. This is great too for when you're training people. That way you don't have to just rely on a designer, pull them off of what they're doing to meet with the new person. Then the new person feels friction. Just capture what you're doing. It's huge for standardization and training new employees. And also when you go to sell and you start to have things like this in your business, you're gonna have a higher valuation. People are gonna want a business that they can pick up, they have systems they can just act on. And the last piece was kind of our moving in day. We already were in the tool, so maybe we'll call it a cleanup. But what we did is essentially we moved things around. When some files had a bunch of extra crap that needed to be archived, we put them into their own archive file, keeping one file clean. The reason we did that is because Figma has a limit on file size. Learning more about the tool helps you customize what you do in it and get the best out of it. On moving day, I just met with everybody one-to-one, and we just had a standard for how we organize things. Even within a file, we injected another layer of hierarchy. We noticed that in Figma, there are simple little pages, and then we just started to name each group of pages so that we had another sub-layer of hierarchy. It's amazing what you can do with simple layers of top-down hierarchy in any tool, any process, any group of people, so that they can quickly understand what you're doing. So if you guys are interested in getting these frameworks in more detail, just let me know. I can put together a free resource. If you want to look at the universal frameworks that we used, have some kind of guide that you can apply to your own tools and how you move forward in your workflows, comment with what you're interested in, and I will see what I can do. And if you're interested in more action to execution frameworks like this, that's exactly what we do at Condensed Concepts. So go ahead and subscribe to our channel, follow us, give this a like, share it with somebody who you think can unblock their business. We're gonna have a lot more stuff coming up to help other companies and founders and their teams to operate better and turn that vision into execution so they can get rich faster with much less stress. I'll see you guys soon.